Welcome to Everything Co-op, bringing you information on how cooperatives can help improve your quality of life. This show is being sponsored by the National Co-op Bank, NCB. The NCB is dedicated to strengthening communities nationwide for the delivery of banking and financial services for the nation's cooperatives, their members, and other socially responsible organizations. For more information on the power of community ownership, visit ncb.coop. That's ncb.coop. Now stay tuned for your host, Vernon Oakes.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome. This is Vernon Oakes. Welcome to Everything Co-op. You know, we're celebrating Women's History Month, and the theme this year is Moving Forward Together. Moving Forward Together, which is very cooperative, working together, but it's women educating and inspiring generations. And we have Kim Coontz on with us today, and she's one of those women that are educating people and inspiring generations to come about cooperatives. And she's the executive director of the California Center for Cooperatives, CCCD. Good morning, Kim.
Good morning.
How are you today?
Oh, I'm great.
Where are you calling in from?
We're in Davis, California.
Okay, so I am in Tucson, Arizona, and here we're at the same time. It's 7:30 out here, so it's early.
Yep.
Well, thank you for getting up early and coming on the show this morning. Kim, I'd like to start with, where did you grow up and where did you go to school?
Oh, okay. I grew up in Southern California and kind of moved my way up north. Went to junior high and high school in Ventura, which is a coastal town, and then moved to Northern California after graduating from high school and ended up in Davis because I went to graduate school here at UC Davis.
So what did you major in at Davis or undergrad?
Sociology.
Sociology. What is sociology?
The study of people and groups and interactions. So it's, instead of being, psychology is really focused on the individual, and sociology is focused, if we look at the individual, it's on the impact of all the groups that influence that person, and then what happens to people in groups. It's actually kind of a nice partner for sociology in many ways.
Okay, so what's the partner with sociology?
Well, I meant it's a nice background for sociology.
Okay.
But for co-ops, sociology is related to co-ops in an indirect way. I never would have gone to had this major in order to become a co-op developer, but it's been helpful.
Okay. Did you learn about co-ops while you're studying sociology then? Since it's a great partner? Not a bit?
So unfortunate.
Yeah. So how did you learn about co-ops?
Well, I actually was finishing up a qualifying paper for my PhD, and it was looking at childcare and social situations, and I had worked for the state on a project that they had, and a friend of mine from graduate school said, "Hey, Kim, there's a position open at UC Davis in this new Center for Cooperatives, and they want someone in childcare that knows about childcare." So I applied and really studied a lot about co-ops and got the job. And so that's really how I ended up with cooperatives, and I just love them. And my interest and so forth spread from childcare to other kinds of co-ops. And here I am, 30 years later, still doing co-ops.
30 years. And you look like you might be 30 years old, so you started at the
Oh, yeah, thank you very much, Vernon.
Okay. So, Southern California, then UC Davis, you learned about it because of a job. And I assume, therefore, you liked it so much, you've stayed in it for 30 years, this whole world of co-ops.
Yes, I really am hooked.
The question for me that just pops up is, why did you want to study about groups of people? Why did you want to study about sociology?
Well, I think it's interesting what influences our behavior, and what makes people who they are, and what kinds of influences happen to us through life that makes people really go in different directions. And I found that really, really interesting. And I still find it interesting in cooperatives to kind of see how people interact with each other, to see what works, what doesn't work in these interactions and so forth.
Okay, so you're studying groups of people to find out how individuals behave, what we do. So are these groups of people in like a city or a rural area, or are they groups of people in a church, or are they groups of people divided by race or economics, or how do you figure what the groups are that you study?
Well, all of those things, all of those things. And I just think, like how, for instance, how do you study racism without looking at the whole context of our society and all the influences and why it is that we need DEI programs and so forth? Because it's not just the individual that is the root of that, and it's not individuals that are prejudiced. It's a whole system that gets intertwined, and so that's why we need programs like affirmative action, like paying attention to race, so that we are conscious about trying to reverse all the things that we've done in the past socially.
But some people say
discrimination that passes from generation to generation.
And some people say that there's no need for affirmative action because we've already overcome all of those things like slavery and Jim Crow and all of that stuff.
Well, I think those people really need to prove it because the proof isn't there.
Yeah, I don't think that's a true statement at all. It's always amazing. And then you get some people saying that's reverse discrimination, trying to help folks go to college or whatever. As you know, I went to Stanford. My sense is I would have never gotten to a Stanford from Bluefield, West Virginia, Bluefield State, a historically black college, without something called affirmative action. And it just opened my world with knowledge and what goes on in the world and the business systems. So yeah, there's a place for making sure that people have a chance that didn't have a chance. Matter of fact, we're held back. Not only didn't have a chance, but were held back, and that still goes on. But it's interesting. I didn't know anything about sociology, and I majored in math and chemistry because that's what I was good at, not reading and writing. I think sociology would not have been on my radar, but I like it. I interviewed a lady from downtown Crenshaw who has a doctorate in sociology, linguistic sociology. And another lady, I've interviewed a couple people. You may be the fourth or fifth person that have doctorates in sociology, and they end up in this co-op world. Yeah, it is quite interesting. And can you tell me a little bit, tell me and the audience, what is this partnership between sociology or lessons learned that you've learned in sociology and what you've learned in co-ops?
I don't know if I can say there's a direct, I learned this and this is what happened. I think that college in general does this for everybody. It helps you to think critically and look really carefully about what's happening. Step back and say, okay, what's happening in this interaction, or why is this co-op having this continuing issue or continuing problem, and what can be done about it? I think it's more a way of looking at things. I mean, it's been so long since I've studied, been in college, but I do think that that's what college does for all of us, is to helps us to think critically. And I think it's been very beneficial to me and very helpful.
Fantastic. What I was looking for I consider whether I have a successful interview is how much I learn. So I was hoping I could learn something that says, in sociology, we find that groups behave like this. And we find that same behavior in co-ops because it's groups coming together to solve some particular problem in the community, and they learn how to work together and solve problems, and that's very similar to what I've learned in sociology. That's what I was looking for in my questions, is how can I learn something and how to apply sociology to co-ops or vice versa?
Yeah, I wish I could say that, because it's it's not that predictive. So I wish I had that answer.
Okay.
And actually, I still, when there's an issue in a co-op, I sometimes call my colleagues and remember that book that we read in graduate school? Do you think that's happening here?
Yes, and that's the kind of thing that I was looking for. And have you find those links? And maybe when we get interviewed 10 years from now, you may have some of those links. But
I wish I would know.
You mentioned child care, and you got hired because they were looking for somebody in child care. So how did you get into this whole field of child care that you knew about child care as you were looking for a job?
Well, when I was in graduate school, I was really interested in systems, and I was looking at, it was a very interesting social welfare question. And I thought, this is good, but I need to have what I'm studying a little bit more related to what I'm doing at home, because, of course, I was a mom. I had my children when I was in graduate school, and I was trying to figure out how to be more effective in my work and in my graduate program, and decided, well, maybe I ought to look and study things that are a little bit more relevant to what I'm doing right now. And so that's how I did a qualifying paper on social welfare systems in different countries and how they address childcare. Then I got a job with the state of California to look at children's programs in the state and what is happening with those programs, to look at how they could be more effective. And so I was looking at childcare in the state of California and services for abused and neglected children and runaway youth. And that's when I got pulled into childcare cooperatives, and it was just fantastic because childcare cooperatives are just such a good system for parents and for children, because especially as all of us are getting moved, having that same experience that I was having in childcare, is there any continuity between my home and my work, and how can I do the best job I can at parenting when I am working so much? And childcare co-ops actually offer that opportunity, because although people are putting their children in care, they're involved in it. They are engaged in what happens to their children outside when they are away. They can serve on the board, they can volunteer in the classroom, they can volunteer outside and be more connected, know the people who are caring for their children, and kind of make more of a blend between that break between childcare and work. And I find that very exciting.
Okay, so you're in grad school and you have children. How many children when you're
I have 4 kids, actually.
4, okay. So child care turns out to be one of the barriers for women getting back in the workforce, okay? And when you look at somebody that has been incarcerated with children, it's finding a job, it is transportation, it is child care that are barriers to them raising their children and et cetera. So you said you were looking for a blend between work and home. And I never even thought about that. How do you have say in the child care? Okay. So was this co-op, so I assume, did you start a child care co-op or find one that you got involved in?
Well, actually, my children were in child care co-ops. I just, they were older by the time I was doing most of my work. They were out of the preschool kind of child care. So I never actually belonged to one, but I have helped to start child care co-ops, certainly.
Okay. So let's talk about child care co-ops. Are they owned by the employees or owned by the parents, the people that uses the child care?
Well, they can be either. The most common type is a parent co-op. And it's a very unusual type of co-op if you think about it, because how long are people in the co-op? We often think of co-op membership as something that's very, very long term. And many times, most of the co-ops are preschool age. And so many times people are only in there for 3 years or whatever, the length of time that their children are in there. However, usually that experience is so impactful that they become friends with some of the other parents at the time. Okay. So I think, I think there are a lot of opportunities to have our lives be more connected when we have something like a child care co-op. It could be something else. But they're usually organized, they don't usually use the co-op statute, and this is what I recommend, is that they organize as a charitable nonprofit. So the purpose of the co-op is to provide a service. It could be the service of providing care for children while parents work. It could be to provide employment for the workers. And what I recommend is a combined multi-stakeholder, which is to have the workers and the parents involved. And there aren't very many of them, but I think it's a really, really win-win model. In order to keep that charitable status, there has to be majority non-interested parties. So if you have a multi-stakeholder co-op in childcare, you can have the employees, their members, and then the parents. There's a board of directors, and there's just one more parent on the board. I think it works really well.
So what we're talking about is there are different types of co-ops. If the co-op is owned and controlled by the employees, it's called a worker co-op. If the co-op is owned and controlled by the people that uses the products or services, and here we're talking about child care, it is a consumer co-op. And housing co-ops, credit unions, rural electric co-ops, they're all consumer co-ops. And this huge company called REI, is owned by the people that shop there, their members, and it's a consumer co-op. So those are two. And I'd say that there are two others, Kim, and that's a purchasing co-op and a marketing co-op. So a purchasing co-op is when a group of people or a group of companies, like farmers, come together and create a business to buy what they need. Artists are using this. Farmers have been using it for some time, so that the farmer will buy the seed, the fertilizer, whatever they need to produce whatever they're producing. There's a group in D.C. that's spreading out, Kim, called CPA, and it was formed to help churches and charter schools and nonprofits buy what they need, whether that was energy or copy machines or trash collection. And they found that particular churches may be paying 3 times what they could get by pooling and purchasing things together. So it helped them to save money so they could do their mission of helping people. So that's a purchasing co-op. And the other one's a marketing co-op. And again, farmers, artists, different people are using to market their goods. I was in San Diego and bought some eggs that maybe had come from Wisconsin, because it was a purchasing co-op a marketing co-op rather. So they're marketing the goods of the farmer so that the farmer has different markets they can get to they couldn't get to by themselves. Create a business that does that. Land O'Lakes, Ocean Spray, what is this?
We have Blue Diamond in California and Sunsweet, Sunmade.
Okay. I was thinking Cabot Creamery, okay, for cheese, dairy farmers. I think there's 600 of them. The number keeps changing, but own this company that markets their products. So they know where they're going to sell to. They know their price. So I was listening to a video, and you were talking about peaches. Peach farmers getting different prices when they try to sell individually. But when they form a co-op and they all sell their peaches to the co-op, then they can get a better price from the big box stores, etc. So those are the 4 types. And what you just talked about with this child care is you can have, you call it multi-stakeholders. They can be owned by both the employees and the parents, the consumers. Okay, yes, yeah, that's awesome. I like co-ops. I've tried to interview more child care co-ops because of the excitement that you just talked about. But I hadn't thought that they're not there that long. The parents are not there that long. So why would they want to work to preserve a business that they're not going to be in so long?
think that's how impactful it is. They have a loyalty and an affinity with the preschool, and some of the parents are there longer because they have more than one child. But it's amazing because a lot of them date back a long, long time.
And that co-op is Community Purchasing Alliance, CPA.
Yeah.
That purchasing co-op. I found this when we look at student housing co-ops, that they're not going to be there long, maybe 4 years. Often they don't find out about the housing co-op until they're there, so they may not even find out until they're sophomore or junior, so it's 2 or 3 years. And they work hard to get the savings, like reserves, so that they can have money to replace the roof 10 years down. They work hard to put these savings together for future students. I always found that extremely exciting. And that's a co-op that's short-term lived. Yeah.
It's really interesting. I never thought about the similarities, but that is really true.
Yeah. Okay, so you got the job because you knew something about childcare. You knew something about childcare because you had children and you were in school, and you got to figure out how you can stay in touch with them even though you were doing graduate work, which, I don't know, it's 20-hour a week job. So you're doing this graduate work and you want to stay in touch with your children, so you learn about childcare. And that gives you the knowledge about co-ops. It gave you your job in UC Davis Cooperative Center. Okay. So what else did you find out in those early years as working in UC Davis?
Well, the Center for Cooperatives at the University of California was actually started by state legislation and placed at the university. And the statute that started it said that the center would serve both agricultural co-ops and non-agricultural co-ops. So that kind of gives you an idea of how people were thinking at the time. So in order to cover all these other non-agricultural co-ops, they also hired a person that was knew about housing at the time, and one that did food. So we were kind of the core of the non-ag. And I just gradually became more and more interested. And actually, interestingly enough, I got into housing co-ops because I was involved in a project to try to figure out how we could get childcare at housing co-ops, that it seemed like a good mesh. And so I started studying about that, and you can't really do that without understanding how they work and so forth. And because there were already some Head Start centers that were at or near housing co-ops, and so then I had to learn about the regulations and everything that was involved. And that really led me into being much more interested also in housing co-ops. And I also became very interested in worker co-ops. At the time that the center was started, we really didn't have anyone in worker co-ops, and so we gradually did. But I became more interested in worker co-ops also, so I started working in that area as well. So, I mean, I think cooperatives are just, it's so inspiring to see that you can use this model by working together to solve really, really core issues. And that's really interests me and has really brought me to being so almost enamored with cooperatives, because it's a model that really works.
Enamored with cooperatives. I got my knowledge about co-ops. Kim, I might have been 49 when I learned about co-ops, so it's 30 years ago or so, 47 maybe. So it was because I was managing housing co-ops in D.C., and I watched mostly black women run the boards that may have had a high school education, but they had learned how to run a business and hold each other accountable, hold me accountable as their property manager and their lawyer and accountant. And they ran tight businesses, successful businesses. So that's what caused me to start learning about co-ops. When we come back, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I would like you to talk to us about some of the co-ops that you've helped to start, give us some examples, and I would like to then talk about this current administration and some of the things that they're doing and how it's affecting your center and how you see it affecting co-ops in general. So when we come back from the break, that's what I want to talk about. In 30 seconds, what's the main thing you've learned about co-ops?
I think that empowerment, that they are a tool for empowerment for people at every level of society, basically. I mean, farmers own these huge farms. Yeah. So basically, I think that.
Empowerment. That's a way to start going to break. We'll be right back. Please don't touch that dial. Welcome back, everybody. This is Vernon Oaks, and my guest is Kim Coontz out of California, CCCD. Kim, before we took break, I said I would want to come back and talk about some of the co-ops you worked with and look at the future. But first, you formed the center. So tell us about that. You mentioned that UC Davis had a center, and I assume it closed down, and then you did what?
I was there for 14 years, and there was a lot of budget cuts and so forth in the state of California, and the center was closed in 2004. Because I had learned a lot about housing, I became executive director of a mutual housing association here in Davis. And while I was doing that, I wanted to start another center. And so I worked with some of the people that I had worked with at UC Davis to start a new center. And it took a few years, but we did that. And in 2007, we opened the California Center for Cooperative Development.
Okay, and how did you fund it? How did you get funding?
That's the thing. That's one of the things that delayed it is I had to, apply for grants, and we started the center with funding initially from the Rural Cooperative Development Grant. And I tried, I didn't get it 2 times.
So was that through Department of Agriculture?
USDA, Rural Cooperative Development Grant.
Okay. So I'm really jumping, but do you still have that grant with USDA?
Yes, and I hope it continues. Yes, we compete every year. It's a 1 year, but it is for all the centers across the United States. It's such a good program. It's really not that much money, and it's become less and less of our total budget, but it's really, really a good, flexible grant in terms of the different kinds of co-ops that you can support and help to start and so forth. Another grant that is the Socially Disadvantaged Groups Grant, also very, very valuable funding for cooperatives.
And who gives that social disadvantage group?
It's also a USDA program.
Wow. So if the current president and his co-president decide to cut Department of Ag, then these could be on the block, these grants?
We're all very concerned about that, for sure. Very concerned about it.
Okay. So let's go to positive. Okay. What are some of the co-ops that you've been able to help form the center over the years or even more recent?
Yeah, I think in jumping off that theme of empowerment, that's something that really is just enriching, and it fills my heart basically in co-ops. One of the childcare co-ops I helped to start is in California. I've helped to start some others in other states, but in California, the first childcare center that I started was quite a long time ago, and it was in a neighboring rural community called Knights Landing. And I worked with, they had no licensed childcare at all in the town. And I worked with another organization to work with the women in that town to form the childcare co-op. Most of the people were farm workers. They were Spanish speaking. And we started it. I mean, we had the parents were out there helping we talked the school into letting them use a room at the school, and the parents came in, and community volunteers made it so that it had toilets that were the right size for licensing. We got another grant from USDA to fund a playground. And the thing that happened with those women, and not only the women that started it, but later on, is they just blossomed. I mean, they were farm workers, not a lot of education, but just like you were saying with the housing co-op that you worked with, they were learning how, I taught them how to read financial statements. They were being accountable to their co-op and learning about how to be better parents at the same time. And it was just very valuable. And then, gosh, I guess 20 years later, the co-op was experiencing some challenges. And I went to a meeting, and there was a woman who was one of the founders of that co-op in that meeting, and she reintroduced herself to me. She spoke fluent English. She didn't know English before. She was working for the city, and it was just, that is what happens when people are in positions where they can have power, where they can have agency, where they can show what they can do. So it doesn't take a college degree, unfortunately, to do those kinds of things. You might want to think. It takes being able to gather those strengths in yourself and do things. And that's what's really exciting. Also, another co-op is that I helped to start is a worker co-op. It's a green cleaning co-op.
Before you speak change,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to bring out one point. What excited me about the women in the co-ops and the housing co-ops is that they had learned how to manage a business. They didn't go get an MBA like I didn't, spend all that money and get all that debt. But they learned how to manage a business. And it's the fifth principle of cooperation that caused me, you said enamored, to love co-ops. Education, training, and information. Okay, that fifth principle, and it's continuous. Dr. Jessica Gordon-Emhart in her book, Collective Courage, collective working together and having the courage to go out and form these businesses. But it was always through education. When she did her studies, there were like spelling bees, there were study bees, there were study groups. And she said they had to continue. You couldn't just do the education till it started. It had to keep going. Weekly trainings, monthly trainings, whatever, the education had to keep going. It was the center of the co-op. And then because they learned financials and they learned how to manage and they learned how to solve problems together, learn how to, when there's conflict, to resolve it, then they're employable. So she could go get a job at the city, or they could run for the school board, or there's all kinds of things that they can do that was not available for them before. That's the empowerment you're talking about.
Yes, it's education, but it's also something that happens to a person when they're in a position where they can use that power, where they see the use of that education, where they see, God, I can look at financial statements. I can analyze what's happening. I can vote for a policy and problem solve how to deal with this particular issue. So I think it's a combination of the education and also seeing those skills in themselves that they can put to use.
So a lady by the name of Dame Pauline Green, who was the president of ICA, International Cooperative Alliance, said on the show that co-ops help people to come out of poverty with dignity. And you're speaking to that dignity, that self-worth, that I'm bad, I can do this, okay? That knowledge. But it's the knowledge plus the action that gives the power. Okay, it's not just the knowledge. It's just not getting knowledge is power. Yeah, it's potential power. It's when you put the action to it, it's where you get the power. And that's what you explained. This lady you saw 20 years later, learned the language, learn how to run a business, learn all of these different skills, and so now she's marketable. She can go out and get jobs or start new businesses. There's all kinds of possibilities.
And know she can do it. And know she can do it.
Yes.
Has that confidence.
Yes. Confidence, dignity, self-worth, all of that. And for me, that's the biggest part of co-ops that I like, is what the transformation of people. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And going all the way back to sociology, working in groups, learning how it helps the individual. And that gets to the co-op values and principles. The first value is self-help. I found that interesting. Self-help is the first value. Self-responsibility is the second. Then democracy, equity, equality. And the sixth one is solidarity. So you help yourself by working together.
Yeah. So
It's
true.
quite interesting. But I love the ethical values of honesty, openness, social responsibility, and caring for others. And that caring for others is what happens in co-ops that doesn't necessarily happen in a capitalistic model. The capitalistic model is extractive, is how can I get the most from your labor, from the environment, from the trees and the mountains and the earth, and give back the least. That, to me, is the capitalistic model. And so that's not in the co-op model. Yeah. Okay, so can you give me an example of another? You were talking about another co-op that you have to form.
Yeah. Another one that actually currently shares an office with us that I helped to start here in Davis is a green cleaning co-op. So I used a new model to start Yolo EcoClean, and I think it's one that can be effective in starting cooperatives for disempowered groups. And I call it a build and recruit model of worker co-op development. So what we do is we do all of the business planning, and that we use a volunteer group initially of leaders in the community or people that have experience in that industry, and we enlist them to be the initial steering committee for the co-op. So it's not the members. They're creating something for the members to come. We create bylaws, we set everything up, and then recruit in the members. And in the bylaws, that steering committee has to leave. And I came up with this, alternative way. I mean, there's lots of successful ways to develop co-ops, because I had many experiences in trying to create worker co-ops, and they never really came to fruition because it takes a long time to start a co-op, and people who don't have a lot of power over their lives don't have oftentimes the ability to say, yeah, I can come to a meeting every second Tuesday or every other week at this time. You know, they have childcare issues that they have to deal with. They have if they're working, they have jobs that give them their schedule, the week before or the day before. And so they have no power to say, yeah, I can be in this meeting. And so what I was frustrated with was that we'd start working with a group, and we'd get a grant like at a library or something like that to start a co-op. And the people that ended up at the end of the organization were not the people that were there at the beginning. And I saw that happen in different projects that I was involved in. And so I think this is a new strategy that can use to start worker co-ops for disempowered groups. And that's what we used with Yolo EcoClean, which is the co-op I was referring to. We did all the business planning. We were able to get some great funding from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development that would also fund the salaries of the workers as they started, so they didn't have to start with free labor. And that co-op is still going today and has grown quite a bit. And the nice thing about green cleaning is that we probably don't realize that the cleaning industry, when people are around a lot of cleaning products, they're really dangerous. They're really not good for people to be around breathing. So in trying to start that co-op, I tried to figure out, okay, we'll use some green cleaning products, but they're very expensive, and they also there's no regulations that say that you have to say what's in cleaning products. So we hired a person to develop some green cleaning. So they mix their own products using these recipes that were developed for another green cleaning co-op I helped to start. And it's just like baking soda, vinegar, and it does a great job. So they are working together. They get paid more than they've ever paid. They have more control over their work environment. They make their own policies and scheduling, and it's really, really successful.
What you just talked about is the benefits of the worker co-op. And starting number one is pay. Well, that to me is number one, but to that worker, it may be having the power to schedule their work, where they don't if they work in home health care, doing maid service, cleaning service, these essential workers that don't normally get paid essential pay. Okay, we found that out during COVID. They're extremely necessary. If they work in a store, they have no say in the big box store in particular about their schedule. Like you said, they may get it a week earlier. And that also affects the child care and all of the different things. Okay. So they have no control over their life, their body, their labor. They don't have the control. And the co-op allows them to have that. That probably is more important than pay. But pay comes very close to 1 and 2. That you get a better pay, and if there's profit, you get a say on what happens to that profit, and you could get some dividends back. Yeah. So those are two of the major basic fundamental reasons for starting worker co-ops.
Right.
I also believe, I haven't seen any studies, but the work that they do would be better also because the happy employees normally do better work. Okay.
Also, they are the direct beneficiaries of their business. So the better the job they do, the more clients they get, the better they feel about their own work, but also the more they make.
Yeah, all of it ties up. So that was ecosystem. I really like the idea of making my own cleaning products. That's neat. You could either sell products or sell recipes. Okay. You have another one? We have a child care. We have a cleaning company.
Well, we also work with housing co-ops, and I've gotten much more involved in housing. We are also an affiliate of a national nonprofit called Rock USA. And one of the projects that we just finally kind of closed the gap on is a park in Fresno that is mostly farm workers that live in the park. The park was purchased by an investor, and the investor doubled their rent, didn't take care of the property very well, and so we worked with some community organizations, and they were getting help from rural legal assistance to address the problems that they were having with the new owner, and we got involved and helped them to purchase their park. And last year, they became the owners of their manufactured home park. Now,
fantastic. Wait a minute, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, if you think about it, I just want to explain, maybe people don't realize that people who in manufactured home parks are extremely vulnerable because they own their home, they own the manufactured home or mobile home that isn't really very mobile, but they don't own the land underneath it, so they're extremely vulnerable. So if residents can purchase their park, they can gain more control of that land underneath it and how much they pay for it and so forth. And we were able to also in that process to be able to get the price because we had to pay a lot of money. They paid a lot of money for the park from the owner to purchase it. And we applied for 2 different programs that the state of California has. And we were able to work with some money from the California endowment that Rock USA was able to manage. They have a special fund, so we got a bridge loan. And just this year, it took 2 years for the money from those 2 state programs to come through. And just this last month, we got that money and they were able to pay off their bridge loan, and that was really, really, really nice. And that is a project that the residents were able to reduce their rent, and it's really nice. And then, of course, looking and working with the board to see how they grow. They're reading their financial statements. They're making decisions, and it's just amazing.
How many units? How many park slots?
I think there's 64 in this park.
So you have just helped 64 families get better control over their lives by having control over their housing.
Right, yeah. Right.
And too often, they are most vulnerable in these mobile home parks to the income. You said they were farm workers. Mm-hmm. Okay, so their income is normally very low, and they're vulnerable to whomever they're working on the farm. They're vulnerable to the mobile home park owners. They're vulnerable to whomever they're buying their food from. So they're very, very vulnerable people. So the more control they can get over their life, and in this case, their homes, then the better control they can have and better they can feel and raise their families, etc. Phenomenal.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that we find in this park, and in other situations is that people have been burnt a lot in their past. So when you first come and you say, we can help you to do this, what is their reaction? Their reaction is based on their past experience.
They don't believe you.
Yeah, sure, right.
There's no trust.
So, it's our job to let them know that. And you let them know that by having them make decisions. They vote on different things. They make the decisions, and that's how we earn their trust, is letting them see you are in charge. This is your park. This is your business. This is your child care center.
So who's doing the property management?
They hire a management company to take care of the day-to-day. Collecting rent, enforcing rules, all that kind of rules that they make.
Okay, I was going to say this. They make the rules, and then they have somebody else enforce. It's awful hard to tell your neighbor, you haven't paid your rent, and if you don't pay your rent, we're going to put you out. That's hard for a neighbor to say to a neighbor, so you need somebody else in the middle there. Yeah. Yes. Okay. First off, Kim, I get why you've been in this business for 30 years. You just blossom up when you're talking about the way you're able to help people to get control over their lives, that power you're talking about, empowering people. Congratulations. Fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I feel really lucky. And nothing better than to have a job you love.
You never go to work. You just get up and have fun doing what you love doing, and you get paid for it too. Hey. The future with this current administration, and you talked about 2 grants, rural co-op development grant and social disadvantage group grants by Department of Ag. So there's this concern of whether or not they would do like they did with USAID. Will they cut out this help for the most needy of people? What do you see you all would be able to do? You have a plan B, or do you have anything?
Well, we're working on our plan B. We've been doing this for a long time, which is diversifying our funding, because that's the part of the job that isn't so much fun, is you have to be able to fund your work. And so we've been successful. I mean, it's always a lot of work to fund a nonprofit. I think one of the things about co-ops that sometimes we forget is that they are nonpartisan. So you have people all along the political spectrum who are absolute co-op advocates. We work with farmers, and they are usually very, very conservative. And they are very pro-co-op. They see what cooperatives do for their farm and their farm business. And when we talk about empowerment, that translates into people who are more civically minded. They are more involved in their communities. We are creating local businesses that support local economies. So whether it's by allowing them to be able to live in their community that they work, by having a housing co-op, having childcare that's affordable, that allows them to work more, all of these things are nonpartisan. So if we can, and I have to say, when the National Cooperative Business Association organizes their annual conference, we always have a day where we go on the Hill, and I talk to Republicans and Democrats, and they are equally impressed with what cooperatives can do, because they are a net plus. And if you think about those 2 programs, what we need to do is to let them see, this is a drop in the bucket of money, and look what you get for it. It is a bargain. So hopefully we can support those programs, but mostly co-ops that really make a difference and are not extractive, but still creating economic good for the society.
Not extractive, which means you're not taking away from labor or taking away from land, and good for society, good for people in the society. You have any sense on how successful you might be?
Well, I'm optimistic. I mean, I think, it's been difficult in the entire time that I've been in, especially as an independent nonprofit. We get no ongoing money. We're constantly fundraising, and hopefully people can see the benefit of co-ops, and we can create some strategies to fund them more effectively. So, I mean, it's always a struggle. That's the thing that's not the most fun about my job, is that always needing to figure out how we're going to fund our staff so that we can help people, how we can help these co-ops to address issues that they might be having, that kind of thing. So that's the essential but not so fun part of the job.
So last week on the show, our guest said that she sees this time as an opportunity because co-ops through the Great Depression, the Great Recession, through wars, they really flourished in hard times. And so if we're looking at hard times, we can look for co-ops to help solve the problems, help create jobs, etc. But it's the question of how do you fund it? I get that. Do you believe what she said too? This is an opportunity. This is a time that we can get and create more co-ops.
Yes, I mean, I wouldn't create the circumstances for the opportunity, but of course, by working together, I think we are in a society that says the individual, we do it with our bootstraps and we do it alone. And that's really not successful a lot of times for most people. But by working together, we can really achieve things. And that's really where I think co-ops enter in and where that opportunity is that people can see by working together, we can get our shared needs addressed.
Working together. And this is what people automatically do. I think this is what we've done since the beginning of time is work together, particularly in hard times. Kim, I want to thank you for taking out time to come with us today. I've got that co-ops empower people, and working together during hard times is what we need to do, not try to do it by ourselves.
Thanks so much, Vernon. It's so nice to meet with you and learn from you, too.
It's a pleasure always. Everybody out there, we'll see you next Thursday. Please live cooperatively, especially during these times.
The preceding program was paid for by Everything Co-op.